Welcome to the first of our webcast sessions. This session is all about the single sales principle, really looking at those 8 myths of selling. Now, let's be honest, some of the myths you would have heard before. Always be closing, it's a numbers game, people buy people, fail to plan, plan to fail. Let's be perfectly honest, many of these you will actually agree with yourself, and I don't blame you. But we're really going to look at the single sales principle. The single sales principle is a little bit different to how most organisations look at sales. Most organisations look at how do we sell. The single sales principle is all about how people buy. And by exposing the 8 myths, we'll look at this principle in more detail. So, myth number 1, always be closing. This is actually one of my favourites. Who remembers the Alec Baldwin, Glengarry Glen Ross infamous film where he said ABC, always be closing? So why do we think that's a myth? Well, do you know what? If you have to constantly be trying to close a customer with sophisticated closing techniques, you've probably gone wrong somewhere. The old traditional way, the self-centric way of selling, was all about us. It was very much asking few questions about the customer, telling them lots of information about us, and then really trying to close to get that decision. In terms of the amount of time that you were spending that sale, you pretty much would spend most of the time trying to close, get the decision. Fortunately, it's now changed. Traditional selling is much more customer centric. The amount of time that we spend in that sale should be really asking questions about the customer, getting into their head rather than just telling them about us. Once we understand why they want something, we can then very much deliver our value proposition against that. And the close, they should be asking us, what are the next steps? We shouldn't be having to force their arm up their back to take that decision. So, first myth, always be closing. It's a myth, I'm afraid. The second, I love this. Attitude sets altitude. Now, I am not disputing that salespeople who have a better attitude will be better in terms of delivering sales results. Absolutely. But it's not as easy as just being motivated by our sales managers. I once worked for a sales manager who used to get us standing on tables, happy clapping in the morning. Come on guys, we can do this. And then the minute we got on the telephone to start phoning our prospects, to deliver a really poor product, and every single one of them saying no, was the minute our motivation just dropped. And after a while, it doesn't take too many rejections to put us back into that pit of despair. So actually we think, yes, the better your attitude as a salesperson, the more energy you will put into your sales, but actually the best salespeople I know are the ones who truly believe in their value proposition. Let's take a look at Apple. How do you think it feels to be an Apple salesperson right now? They are recording record profits quarter on quarter. Why? Because they have great products. So we suggest to you is go back to your drawing board, understand your value proposition and ensure that you believe in that value proposition. Because if you do, that will set your altitude. Myth number 3. Again, I can hear you crying. Absolutely, this must be true. And of course, I'd rather work with somebody that I like than work with somebody that I dislike. However, is it just about liking somebody? No, it isn't. In business, I don't want to be your best friend. I want to work with you because you provide something to me that I need. And actually, that's what people buy. People buy your value proposition. They buy your credible solution. They don't buy you because you're a really, really nice person. So it's a single sales principle that we're trying to achieve, and that's your credible solution. Myth number 4. Customers like to talk about themselves. No, they don't. They don't like to talk about themselves. You may think they do. You may get that customer who can bore for England, who you ask one question and they go on about what they did this morning and how their golf game was, etc. But they're a rarity. Most customers like to talk about the issues, the problems, their desires, the things that they want to achieve. So if that's what you mean by they like to talk about themselves, fine, but they want to talk about their compelling needs. They don't want to talk about the story of their life. So what you have to do as a salesperson is identify their compelling needs. What are their desires? What are the things that are keeping them awake at night? How can you help those problems and help them to achieve their goals? Myth number 5. Having worked in many call centres, it's one of my favourites. It's a numbers game. As long as we make enough phone calls, we'll get the deal. It's a bit like a needle in a haystack. If we look hard enough, we'll find it. But that takes a lot of effort. I love this graphic. Finding the needle in a haystack is quite easy if you set the hay on fire. Cut all of the hay, the excess out the way. What you need to do is become targeted. You need to become segmented in that marketplace. You need to understand who not only the customer is, but who's the right customer. Who are the customers that will buy your product? So it is a numbers game once you start phoning the right people. Because if you phone more of the right people, then you have more of an opportunity to sell to them. Myth number 6. Sell the sizzle, not the sausage. Now I cannot deny that if I'm hungry and I walk past some sausages sizzling in a frying pan, it smells divine. But actually I've seen many salespeople deliver presentations that quite frankly were high on style but short on substance. It's really the content that you need to deliver to your customers. It needs to be relevant for your customers. There's no point delivering a presentation which is a round peg in a square hole. So by adapting your presentation 100% to the customer's compelling needs will ensure that it's an effective presentation. But I've seen presentations that have videos, fancy graphics. Quite frankly, so what? It's blah, blah, blah. So sure, make it relevant and ensure that the presentation meets their needs. Myth number 7, money talks. A lot of salespeople say to me, Mark, we're just too expensive. We're not competitive enough. Well, actually, the reason that they think that is because they're not providing value for money. So actually, money talks, I'm not sure it does. I love this. They say, money talks, but mind just waves goodbye. What a salesperson needs to do is ensure that it meets the value line. What that means is the price needs to be aligned with the compelling need and the credible solution. What that means is, providing your specification if there's a high enough quality, and providing the customer requires that quality, they'll be prepared to pay the money for it. So don't worry about the price. What you do need to worry about is, what is your value proposition? You get that right, and pretty much the money takes care of itself. And lastly, fail to plan, plan to fail. Now, I believe that many of you at this point will be going, yes, at last. I don't need to fill in the CRM system. I don't need to do my account planning. Well, you're kind of half right. All too often I see salespeople in the office spending hours over the laptop, spending hours and hours of time researching their customer, only to pick up the phone to find out that actually a lot of that planning wasn't relevant. I love this quotation. It's good to plan, but don't let the planning take place of doing. And I like that because at the end of the day, we can plan too much. We can almost procrastinate on making that phone call or making that visit or making that difficult introduction to an organisation. So actually be prepared, but there is a middle ground. There is an optimal planning detail range that actually gets the sweet spot in terms of not too much, but actually enough to ensure that they know that you know what you're talking about. So, they are our 8 myths of selling. And why do we talk about that? Well, pretty much refers to what I said earlier. It's the single sales principle is all about why people buy. It isn't about how you sell. And those 8 myths have existed for the years that they have because of this almost macho sales environment that certainly I've grown up in and maybe you have too. If we flip that on its head and we understand what is it that the customer wants from us, do we have what they want, and is it at a price that they find is value for money. If we could achieve that, i.e. the single sales principle, then we have a fantastic value proposition. So I hope you enjoyed our webcast. We are now available to take questions from you. So over to you.